Good evening and many thanks for watching KTN News. My name is Dennis Aseto. Welcome to this edition of Planet Action, your #1 show when it comes to issues that deal with climate change and what we need to do to change that. In studio today, we will be having a discussion on issues to do with renewable energy, what we must do if we are to change this tide. But before we get to that conversation, let's just go to stories on what others are doing to be able to leave their own carbon footprint and reduce that as they move forward. Now, as the Climate Week took place across the world, Devki Group is reducing carbon footprint with a 4-megawatt peak rooftop solar plant deployed at the Ruiru Steel Manufacturing Site Limited. Now, according to Devki Group chairperson Renewable, the move will see future operations made sustainable with efficiency. The initiative is expected to save over 40,000 trees and reduce environmental impact of carbon emissions.
Our plan is to put 30 megawatt solar power in all our factories, although our requirement is more than 200 or 300 megawatts in total. But we want to try and see as much as we can from solar. Then also we have planned for the wind power, and also we have the waste heat recovery power plants. Carbon emission is one thing, is that you try and use the clean energy. And number two is when you are producing something, there is a heat is coming out, that's carbon, and you are releasing into the environment. It is the first company, the Devki Group of company, and the national cement, that is Simba Cement, which we have invested and put the money to tap that heat back and put it into the boiler and produce the power. In our Samburu power plant, which was a Samburu steel factory, this conference will really open our eyes, and it will save a lot of our trees, and we will be able to plant more and more, because we will get the encouragement from the government, from the environment, from the all the sectors, because now government is going to promote this sector so much that Kenya will be the #1 country in the next coming 5 years' time.
Now, as the world continues to deal with the effects of climate change, new inventions continue to be applied every new day. Clean and renewable energy is considered as one of the sure ways this fight against climate change will be won. But how are we approaching the entire debate? Are we doing enough? And is the entire conversation based on profits, or is it a human rights issue? In studio with me is Dr. Andrew Wambua from Africa Voices Dialogue, and Amos Somanya, Senior Advisor, Power Shift Africa. Gentlemen, welcome to this show as we continue to have this conversation. I will start directly with you, Andrew. Now, the entire conversation on renewable energy is a big science subject, and a lot of people have approached it from an angle of how much am I going to make at the end of this if I move from fossil fuels to renewable energy? How should we approach it? Is it a question of profits, or is it a human rights issue?
Thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you for the opportunity. One of the things we need to think about when we talk about green energy, we should think about our mother nature, keeping our environment clean before we think about profits. As they say, first of all, follow the purpose, then the money will follow. But if we start with the money, we will never achieve our objective. So when you talk about renewable energy, I'm quite happy with the mind shift in values, beliefs, and attitudes, because at the moment we are talking of 83% on average of uptake of renewable energy. So that is quite a good improvement. Comparing it to the 2013. It was around, in 2013 it was around 40%. Right now it is around 83%, with the geothermal energy leading at 39%, hydro coming second at 29%, wind is following closely in that position at around 16%, thermal energy at 13%, and solar. We have been many of us have been talking about solar. When I was looking at research, my expectation was the uptake of solar was supposed to be maybe leading, but to my surprise, the uptake of solar is around 2%, which is quite surprising to me, and to many of us who are embracing green energy supply.
And I'll come to you, Amos, now. He's talked about solar, and when we talk about solar, it's not just about the panels. Getting a panel is pretty affordable. But when it comes to storage of this power is where now rubber meets the road, because storing this power, the batteries are expensive, minerals that we need to manufacture these batteries are expensive. We don't even manufacture them here in Africa. So as we talk about issues to do with the renewable energy and even saving this energy for our use, how should we approach this? Because we say Africa needs to go green, our carbon footprint is low, but you're buying everything from the West. So then how do we have this conversation such that we win and they win?
Yeah, the thing is, Dennis, no meaningful human development can happen without access to modern energy services. And if you look at our continent right now, we still have hundreds of millions who do not have access to electricity. That means we're doing an injustice to these millions, hundreds of millions of Africans who do not have access to modern energy services. Therefore, we need to make energy accessible to everyone if we are to deal with the challenges that we are faced with as a continent. One of the challenges you already mentioned about the climate crisis. Today, here in Kenya and across Africa, we are treated to a frequency of extreme weather events, a very high frequency. If it's not droughts, we are seeing our communities suffering from floods. We need to help these communities build resilience to this climate crisis. We still have also so many people in Africa who are living in poverty. For us to be able to alleviate poverty on the continent, we need to have access to energy. For example, if our agricultural production fails because the rains have failed, if we have access to affordable and reliable energy, say solar, for irrigation services, then we are able to continue producing. And that prevents us from facing hunger. Actually, extreme weather events should not be leading to disasters on the continent. And at the center of this is energy access. You mentioned about issues of storage.
Yes.
Renewable energy technologies have been improving over time. You see, they used to be a periphery technology previously, but they are becoming mainstream. If you look at Africa, by the way, oil and gas and coal are not new on the continent. Africa has been exploiting its fossil fuels since independence. But if you look at the countries that have been exploiting fossil fuels, such as Nigeria, we still have problem with access. Yes. So the energy system that is built on fossil fuels has not helped Africa. What we are saying is, for Africa to be able to develop, we need a new energy system. We cannot bank on an energy system that has failed the continent. And that's why we are saying, let's embrace renewable energy technologies. And like I mentioned, the technologies are improving, the costs are coming down. Actually, renewable energy technology costs are competitive compared to fossil fuels. So let's invest in the energy systems of the future to be able to help our communities.
I'll come to you, Andrew. Now, he's mentioned to do with energy costs are coming down and all that, but at home, energy costs are going up, brother. They are going up every other new day. And that comes to my next question, which would be, has the government made it easier for Kenyans? Has it made it easier for us to access energy? The policies that are in place, is it making easy? Are they making it easier for you and I to access energy? And if not, what must the government do to make sure that that common mamamboga, the person who's living in a glass house, both access energy at the same rate?
Let's go back then to the objective of the National Energy Policy of 2018. It talks about ensuring that energy supplied is affordable, is accessible, is scalable to all sectors of the economy, so that they can reduce poverty levels. Amos has talked about poverty levels in the country, and not only in the country but across Africa. And in Africa, we are talking. He has talked about millions of Africans who have got access to sustainable energy. And actually, the recent data talks about 600 million Africans who cannot afford energy. So the thing is, if that policy was if the 2018 policy was to be implemented, then I think all the sectors of the economy would benefit. And the National Energy Policy of 2018 echoes the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which talks about access to affordable and clean energy. But again, when you look at what is happening in the country, we cannot deny that the cost of the power supply, cost of power distribution is pretty high. We have to acknowledge that. And part of it could be maybe because of the monopoly nature, of the monopolistic nature of Kenya Power and Lighting Company. I think we need to have a kind of a consultation, bringing all the parties together. Bringing the private sector together to the table, together with that is public sector, the private sector. And we're talking about private sector, we're talking about IPPs, that is independent power providers. Let us identify where the challenge is, because many times we have blamed the global economy, which is true, partly just contributed. But again, some of these issues are the local problems. And I think the moment we come together as stakeholders, as key stakeholders, we will come up with a solution. But comparing the cost of electricity in the country, I think it's quite high, but I think the government can do something. And that's why the other day, I think last month, the government came up with the ABESHA, to curb the skyrocketing cost of electricity. And what I would encourage or advise the policy experts is to really look at it being led by research, not by opinions.
Thank you. Andrew, now let me just come to you. Amos.
Yes.
This country, as we speak right now, we consume renewable energy at more than 80%. You talk about wind power, we talk of hydropower. All these are renewable energy that Kenyans ought to get at an affordable price. Why are the power bills up, and is it about time that the government came to have this discussion and open up the market?
Yeah, Kenya is a leader in renewables, it's true.
Thank you.
We are blessed with a mix and diverse renewable energy sources. You rightly mentioned geothermal, solar, wind, hydro, for small hydro projects, of course. And our electricity grid is dominantly fueled by renewables, but still the costs of electricity are very high. I think it's a question of scale. What are we using our electricity for? You see, the economics of scale is the more people consume, then the cost is distributed and it becomes affordable. But also there's the question of high levies on our electricity supply that needs to be reconsidered. But the thing is, if you look at Kenyans who have even access to electricity, they probably not use it even for cooking. So I think because it's the question of affordability, we would rather use LPG for cooking rather than use electricity. But if majority of Kenyans are connected, and then I think the cost would be redistributed. But on the government side, you see, government should be a regulator but also an enabler.
Yes.
And we have seen our president being the global leader, advocating for renewable energy rollout across the world. And he calls it is no-brainer that we need to move to renewables. But this has to also come with the policies that are enacted locally. We need subsidies, for example, for these renewable energy technologies so that they are affordable and they are able to be rolled out in large scale. And people can have home systems where they are producers of their own electricity. And you don't have to depend on the national supplier. These decentralized small-scale systems will be able to help us drive down the cost. But you see, the initial investments in renewable energy equipment is normally very high. And that's why if the government comes in as an enabler, by putting in resources, but also policies that will enable consumers of electricity to become producers. I think that would be a key step.
Amos, you've talked about the president urging the world that it is a no-brainer. We have to go to renewable energy. And yes, charity begins at home. But that seems not to be the case, though, because right now, for you to have solar or solar panels or electricity in your home, there is measures that have been put in place that the installer himself needs to have more than $1 million shillings in the bank account. It has made it difficult for them to install solar panels in your house for you to enjoy renewable energy. This is the government and its policies making it difficult for Kenyans to have renewable energies. Moving forward, how do we approach this? Because whether we like it or not, we are going solar.
I mean, and as a country, we should be very appreciative due to the fact that Kenya is a very conducive environment for solar installations. And also the wind intensity speed, the wind strength speed is pretty good across the country. And that one, of course, lays a great ground for installation of this. But again, Amos talked about high installation costs and of course, high taxes.
Yes.
I think that is where the issue arises.
How would you want to see it handled?
Because I would talk about, first of all, having clear policies. I don't think that there are policies. And I think that is where it should start. And these policies should not be informed by opinions, but they should be informed by research. You see, a researcher has his own role. A policymaker has his own role, and then there is a practitioner. The three of them, they should work hand in hand. First of all, to identify the gap. Do we have a gap? I mean, of course, right now all of us are talking about high cost of electricity, which is very true. But again, how can now research come and now inform the policymakers, the policy experts? Because right now, Kenya is striving to be 100% clean by 2030. But unless we have clear policies, well-defined policies and procedures, we are just daydreaming.
Stories.
They are just stories.
Those are stories.
Those are just stories. But again, I would like to appreciate the government. At least they are speaking. When the president goes to, the other day I saw him meeting some of the investors in the US when he was in New York. He met one of the great investors in Africa by the name Mike Milken. Recently, Mike Milken supported quite a number of startups in the continent to push for affordability, to push for installation of a renewable energy. So that is a great move. But again, let there be policies.
I will just come to you, Amos. Now, when we talk about energy, and I'll compare with US, Elon Musk is creating solar panels from Tesla, and we know that right now it is very cheap for you to move to solar. Is actually subsidized rates for people to go green. That is one of his way of giving back to the society. Back home, even as we import all these things, we import solar panels, we import storage. As the president is having this discussion and is a champion for renewable energy, how about the fact that it is about time we approached it from an angle that those that sell these, we get them at a subsidized rate, or even better yet, because we mine cobalt here in Africa, why don't we produce them back home so that it's cheaper for us?
Yeah, the thing is, for a very long time, Africa has been known to be a supplier of raw materials. And that's why I said the energy system of the past has failed Africa, because we normally export crude oil and import refined oil. The thing is, Africa needs to change its industrial policies so that even as we develop our energy system, is built around an industrial policy to empower Africa. We cannot have all these resources on the continent, including here in Kenya, that are fueling the development of the equipment elsewhere, and our business is just to sell raw materials that are used in the manufacture of this equipment. Actually, that's not sustainable. what the African agenda should be and our president's agenda should be when you are engaging is to build local industries. And that way, even that will drive down the cost of electricity because we are producing equipment locally, we are creating jobs for our people, and that means that improves their income, that makes them their buying capacity to go up, and they are able even to consume the electricity that is being produced. But also, we become sovereign, energy sovereign, so that we don't depend on the external world. You remember when COVID was here and there was no movement, that means even commodities, we could not easily acquire equipment and stuff. But if you have everything being produced locally, you become independent. You mentioned about high prices of energy. This being driven by geopolitical situations that's happening. If you have invested in renewables, including equipment production, you will not be affected by these external forces. You'll be sustainable and you're able to control your own prices within. But right now, we are having a situation where we are dependent too much on the outside, and that means we are vulnerable to external conditions, including if there is a conflict, then we are not able to get the equipment on time. That affects even our production, that affects our fuel costs, that affects everything, even our cost of living and quality of life. So for us to sustainably develop and meet all the sustainable development goals and meet the African Agenda 2063 and meet the Kenyan Vision 2030, we need to invest in local systems. We are blessed with sun. We need to invest in our sun. We need to invest in our wind. We need to invest in our geothermal.
Now, Dr. let me come to you as you still have this conversation, but let us now break it down to the home level. Now, the rural societies stats have shown that they suffer the most when it comes to the pressures and the heat that have emanated due to climate change. Now, we are telling them, do not cut trees, don't use firewood. Go LPG. LPG prices are high. We know the president also removed some levies when it comes to LPG, but still affordability remains being the key question. What are some of the other options that we can use, say methane gas? Do they know what methane gas is? And how can also the government come in place and come with policies to make methane gas be affordable moving forward, and also other renewables that they can use at home be affordable?
Thank you. But before I answer your question, let me first echo what Amos has said. Amos rightly said we need to decolonize our thinking. That is that should be the key term, decolonizing our thinking, because we have been so much brainwashed to think unless we use energy outside our country, outside the continent, we cannot meet our energy demands. That is totally wrong. Look at the countries like Nigeria, which is the 5th largest producer of oil, yet it imports oil. I don't know. That is madness. I don't get it. Now coming back to your question, going back to the village, you see the rural setup. Those people who live in rural zones are most it, because the poverty levels in rural zones are quite higher as compared to poverty levels in urban centers, and also the economic levels, the cost of living. Of course, they are highly affected by economic meltdown. The rural homes, but I would say. There's need of sensitization.
Thank you.
A lot of sensitization needs to be done, because I grew up in the village, and I'm proud of that.
I'm a village boy as well.
All the three of us, having grown up in the village, we are proud, and we learned the hard lessons. And when I go back to the village, I find inadequate sensitization on the advantages, on the merits of the renewable energy. People depend much on coal, or people depend much on charcoal, logging, that is cutting down trees. And you see, the more we cut, the more we log, the more we cut these trees without planting 2 or 3, we are contributing to climate change. And it is predicted that if we continue logging, the effect of climate change is going to impoverish around 130 million people by 2030.
Doc.
That is That is in addition to 150 million people globally who have already been affected by COVID-19.
Doc, these 3 village boys, let's take a short commercial break. When we come back, we continue having this discussion on how best we can enhance what we have, how best we can take advantage of the resources that we have to have clean energy that is not only good for us, but for the environment as well. We'll be back in a few.